So we're going to introduce you to our guest speaker. And this is awesome. Lewandowski. Lewandowski. How awesome is that? Think about that. Think about when you say that name and realize that this person helped guide the next president of the United States right here from New Hampshire.
And that's exactly the type of leadership we breed here in the state. And if they're not born in the state, they come to the state because they know that's where they want to be. For those of us who've been around long enough, we know Corey. For those of you who used to listen to my Saturday morning show, Corey remembers this. He used to come in and co-host with me. And he was always gracious, probably a big cup of coffee. And we would have a great time. Didn't we, Corey? We talked about everything. Because it was that important. Corey, I'm going to read you some facts about Corey here in a minute, but there's more than just what is written here on the paper in front of me. Corey doesn't do this for money. He doesn't do this for ego. He does this because he loves New Hampshire and he loves this country. I will tell you that again. He loves New Hampshire and he loves this country. Most of us wake up every single morning, and if we're blessed, we have a wonderful wife and great kids, and we know that they are the most important things in our lives. And that helps drive Corey every single day. And when you look at his brief resume, many of you don't know, he used to be in law enforcement. That's how Corey and I first bonded. And as he progressed through, he became very important in almost everything that we do here in New Hampshire. He's currently the chairman of the Great American Agenda PAC, whose agenda is to help President Trump. And I just automatically attached it to a bomb. Corey continues political strategist in his own firm, Avenue Strategies. Corey previously served as the chief political advisor and campaign manager for now President Donald Trump. And I don't think we can underscore that enough how important it was. So when this whole thing started, I got a call from the Trump campaign. They said, Jeff, Donald Trump's going to run for president. And would you come and host his announcement here in New Hampshire? I said, I'd be glad to. I got to tell you right now, there was no more a happier warrior in this process than Corey Lewandowski. He, above everybody else, even sometimes the candidate, knew he was going to win. And that is important if you run for office. To have the one person next to you who is absolutely 100% convinced that you're going to be the next president of the United States. And that takes a strong character to be able to do that. It takes somebody who understands what New Hampshire values are. And we couldn't be more prouder than what Corey Lewandowski did. Because he was instrumental in making sure that Hillary Clinton did not become president. And if the Republican Party had the opportunity to save anyone, it would be St. Corey. Ladies and gentlemen, Corey Lewandowski.
Thank you so very much. You know, this dinner invitation from Diane is really special to me. This is where I live and raise my family. And I've had the privilege, the high privilege, of traveling around the country and seeing a whole bunch of people, many of whom I didn't know before the campaign started. But that's not the case in this room tonight. I've known many, many of you for a long time. And you've known me, and it's so important to be here. And it's really, of all the places I've had the opportunity to speak, and I've had some great opportunities, this is the most special to me. It's where I live, it's where I raise my family, and it's where we decide that we want to make sure we make a difference at the local level, at the state level, and it's really important to me. So thank you very much for the opportunity. Now, I heard Governor Sununu speak earlier, and I could have sworn this guy was telling my story. Right? His communications director gets up and says, I don't have a speech. Right? I live this life. It's called Announcement Day, June 16, 2016. Right? I remember it so very well. The day that Donald Trump announced he was going to run for president of the United States. Although I actually, truth be told, wrote a speech that day that lasted 7 minutes and 45 seconds. And the president took that speech and threw it out the window and then went on to speak for about 45 minutes. And that was my first true indoctrination into the Trump world. But, you know, before we made that official speech in June of 2015, I knew New Hampshire was going to be a special place. And I'm selfish. I'm selfish because I love this state. And I want to make sure Donald Trump came here as often as possible. And as a campaign manager, I had the privilege of directing him and his calendar for 18 months of his life. And never ever did he say to me, I can't or won't go there. And it was amazing, because I kept saying, we got to go back to New Hampshire, we got to go back to New Hampshire, we got to go back to New Hampshire. Because I understood the importance of it. And the first event that we did in New Hampshire happened to actually take place at Steve Stepanak's house. It's a nice house. Not a Trump-sized house, but a nice house. And the event had so many people in it. It was so packed and so hot in this place that Trump's like, this guy doesn't have air conditioning. You don't understand that. And I said, well, he's not really that rich, sir. He's okay, but he's not that rich. And literally, the president was at the time, candidate Trump was up there, and he was giving his stump speech, and he said, you know, the place is, you know, packed to the rafters, and on cue, you heard a glass shatter in the background, and that was the beginning of the end of Steve Stepanak's house, which I think he's now sold, because you get a premium out of it, I think, because the president had been there. But look, in all honesty, Donald Trump is the greatest political phenomenon of our lifetime. And I mean it. We have a candidate who has never run for office, but has been successful at everything he's ever tried to do, whether it has been a best-selling author or a TV personality, or whatever it may have been. And here's what some of the media said as we started this campaign. And I know the fake news, and you guys know the fake news, so let me just read you a couple of things that they said. CNN's Michael Smirkanish called Donald Trump the George Costanza of the 2016 field. The Washington Post's Jennifer Rubin called Donald Trump a pathological liar, narcissist, know-nothing who would never run for office. George Will actually quit the Republican Party. And George W. Bush's speechwriter, Mark Thiessen, found Trump so unpalatable that he decided to defend torture over defending Donald Trump on television. But the good news is that a study released by the Media Research Center found that 69% of the respondents did not believe the media or their honesty in this election cycle. And more importantly, 97% of the people who were surveyed said they didn't allow the media's bias to influence their vote. So let's just talk about this for a second. As President Trump approaches the end of his first 100 days in office, he has received by far the most hostile press treatment of any incoming American president, with the broadcast networks punishing him with coverage that has been 89% negative. Think of that, 89% negative. Okay? In a study just released, they looked at ABC, CBS, and NBC from January 20th, Inauguration Day, through April 9th, and over 1,000 stories focused on Mr. Trump and his new administration. That amounted to 1,900 minutes of total airtime, and only 186 minutes of those were positive or neutral. It wasn't that long ago, ladies and gentlemen, that we received our press from three people who sat behind an anchor chair at 6:30 at night and didn't want to be the news. They want to report the news. Those days are over. Look, now it's about clicks, It's about making sure that their story is driven first. It's about saying things that aren't factually accurate. Let me give you one example of this. A friend of mine is a reporter for Time magazine. His name is Zeke Miller, and he's a fine man. Zeke Miller walked into the Oval Office immediately following the president's inauguration, took a picture of the Oval Office, and then he tweeted out that the bust of Martin Luther King Jr. had been removed from the Oval Office. 3,000 media outlets re-reported that the bust of Martin Luther King Jr. had been removed. Do you know what the bust of Martin Luther King Jr. was and still is to this day? It's in the exact same spot that Barack Obama had it, and there was a Secret Service agent standing in front of it. Now, he didn't do his due diligence, and he didn't ask anybody. He didn't try and verify the story. And you know what he said afterwards? Whoops, I made a mistake. No problem. 3,000 outlets carried as factually accurate that Donald Trump had removed the bust of Martin Luther King Jr. And I think that's shameful. And I think what the media missed this election cycle, what my friends in New Hampshire, in particular in the primary, saw was that Donald Trump was authentic, and he was effective at a message, and he was willing to fight for what he believed in, even when the media didn't think it was right. And that is what propelled him to become what we dubbed as the blue-collar billionaire. See, unlike previous campaigns, we had a different narrative. We were proud of the Trump wealth. And many of you know this because we took the 757, we landed at Pease Air Force Base as often as we could. Renee loved that because she gets like landing rights or something every time. It's amazing. And we brought it to Manchester, and we brought the helicopter, and we showed off what the American people want again, which is to be successful. And we ran a campaign that put America first. This isn't isolationism. This is about America. Donald Trump wasn't running to be the president of Germany or the prime minister of Great Britain. And everywhere we went, as we went to these states that had traditionally been Democrats for the last 30 years, Ohio, Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, we heard the same story time and time again. I want to be proud to be American. My family served in the military. My father, I did. We used to have good jobs. We've had bad trade deals. We need to stop this. We need to put America first. We want to make America great again. And the media would say, boy, he's a bad guy. He's not going to take care of the rest of the world. You're damn right he's not. He's going to take care of America for a change.
See, I think Donald Trump is like a racehorse. And I had the privilege to see this firsthand. In my time on the Trump campaign, about 18 months, I spent about 1,400 hours just on his airplane in 18 months. That's about 58 days straight. This is an individual at 70 years old who literally works 18 hours a day, 7 days a week, and doesn't take vacation. And he's a lot like American Pharoah, a great racehorse. You don't see them often, but when you do, you know a winner when you see it. And Donald Trump was always willing to do whatever it took to get the job done. And we used to have this slogan on the campaign where we always said we had the best plane and the worst food. Because I could sit down and count on one hand the number of times candidate Trump sat down to have a meal. We would have McDonald's 4 nights a week. We'd get Chick-fil-A if we were really, really lucky on the plane, which didn't happen very often. Wendy's was the other staple on the plane. And that's how we ate. And he would not eat until the last event of the day was done. We would start at 6 or 7 in the morning. We'd finish and go wheels down at 11 or 12 o'clock at night. Because he always wanted to make sure that we get everything in that we needed to. And it was amazing because this is a quintessential Donald Trump story. I had the privilege to travel to Las Vegas, Nevada with Mr. Trump and his business partner, and he owned a hotel out there with the big name Trump on it. And he said, his business partner said, hey, let's go to dinner at a nice restaurant called the Capitol Grill, directly across from the Trump Hotel. So the president, at the time, candidate Trump, said, okay, let's go. We walked into the restaurant and we sat down for a meal. And the woman came by and she said, sir, would you like sparkling water or spring water? He said, is the steak ready? And she said, excuse me? And he said, is the steak ready? And she said, sir, would you like sparkling water or spring water? He goes, which steak is already cooked? I got to get the hell out of here. We were in and out of the restaurant in 26 minutes. It was amazing because he had to do something else. Whatever he was doing, he had to be doing the next thing. And that is what has propelled him to be so successful as both a candidate and now ultimately as the president. So I just want to talk about a couple things. Donald Trump, in my opinion, he's that big game player. He's the guy, when you're down 2 with 5 seconds left, you want to give the ball to because he always rises to the occasion. That's what the media forgot about Donald Trump. He has won at everything he has tried to do. So he would have had a very good life. But what he knew and what the American people knew was that Washington, D.C. has been broken for the last 30 years. Republicans and Democrats alike have raised our debt and put us further in debt and not taken care of the things that they should have done. And what our campaign did, which is the New Hampshire way, is we didn't rely on political consultants. There were none on the campaign the entire time I was there. None. If you weren't willing to work 18 hours a day in the office every day or travel with us, you didn't have a job on the campaign. And I had this vendor who came to us, and he was a big phone vendor, one of the biggest in the country. And he said, "I'd like to do the phones for the Trump campaign." I said, "Okay, that's very nice of you. Thank you very much." And he said, "I'd like you to pay me $25,000 a month for my services, plus a piece of whatever I do on the phones." I said, "What?" He says, $25,000 a month. I said, "I'd like a counter proposal. Okay? Here's what I recommend. I'll pay you $250 a week. You start in the back of the room over here. You open up the mail. If you do that really, really well, we'll move you up to, answering the phones in the office. If you do that really, really well, we'll have you say hello to some of the people who come into the office." He goes, No, you don't understand. That's not what I do. I'm a vendor." I said, No, I understand. But what you don't understand is the days of the political elites telling us how to run a campaign. Those days are over. Okay? We're not going to have it anymore. No fancy TV ads. No outside consultants. We focused the campaign on the key battleground states of Florida, North Carolina, Ohio, and Iowa. And we knew we had to also win all the states that Mitt Romney had won 4 years ago if we were going to win. And Florida was ground zero. And it was the state that we traveled to the most, and then North Carolina. And look, in addition to winning every state that Mitt Romney won, Donald Trump won Florida, Ohio, Wisconsin, Iowa, Michigan, and Pennsylvania. And we fell 2,700 votes short of winning here in New Hampshire. Unprecedented in the history of the modern Republican Party. But you have to remember what Ronald Reagan said. He said, "Freedom is never more than one generation from extinction. And we didn't pass it to our children in the bloodstream. It must be fought for, protected, and handed on for them to do the same." And so what does that mean going forward? Look, winning an election, even for President of the United States, is the easy part. Now he's got to govern. And this is a tough thing to do, so let's look at what his agenda looks like for the first 90 days as we sit here, okay? He wants to propose a constitutional amendment for term limits. That's what he's talking about in the campaign. That will come down shortly. For every one new federal regulation, the president has signed an executive order that says he will eliminate 2. And as a matter of fact, in a study that was just released by the American Action Forum, they estimate that President Trump has saved American taxpayers more than $86 billion in regulatory costs in the first 3 months of this administration. That is a huge dichotomy from where we were. Renegotiate NAFTA or withdraw under Article 2205. Withdraw from the TPP has been done. Stop trading abuses and that unfairly impact the American worker. We saw that done. Lift restrictions on the production of $50 trillion worth of energy reserves. Done. Keystone Pipeline. Done. Cancel billions of dollars to the UN climate change program. Done. Executive order today to stand up for our steel workers yesterday who took care of our veterans. 2 important things that we always overlook, and we need to put them back in the front of the burner. Name and get confirmed a replacement for Antonin Scalia. Done. Cancel funding to sanctuary cities. Done. 2 important things. And if you think of what this president said by putting America first, 2 important things. Begin by removing more than 2 million criminal, illegal aliens who are in our country. Unfortunately, when we traveled the campaign trail, we had the privilege, unfortunately, of meeting a number of the families whose loved ones were killed by illegal aliens. And Jamil Shah, who the president's highlighted on numerous occasions, had a boy, 17-year-old boy, who's going to go to Stanford on a football scholarship, African-American kid, who came back from football camp one day and was walking to his house in California. There was an illegal alien who just got released from a county facility in California. He was a gang member. His initiation of staying in the gang was that he'd go and shoot somebody to prove that he was still part of the gang, which he had just been released from prison for. And he showed up and he put a bullet through Jamil Shah's son's face. The boy put his two hands up like this to block the bullet. He shattered his hands. He shot him 2 more times. And Jamil was home at the time, and Jamil's wife at the time was serving our country overseas as an army officer. And Jamil came out and found his son dead on the stoop, right there. All because an illegal alien who had been in our jail system, who should have been deported, wasn't. And Jamil's son will never be here. And what I don't understand, this is not a Republican ideal, it's not a Democrat ideal, it's an American ideal. It's why we would not do everything humanly possible to protect our individuals who live in this country from all enemies, both foreign and domestic. If that means you are a criminal in this country and you are here illegally, Jeff Sessions will deport you back to wherever you come from. And one other executive order that the President issued, it's so amazing to me, because the Constitution is quite clear. Suspending immigration from terror-prone regions where we cannot properly vet who is coming to our country. This is the same executive order that Barack Obama used, that George W. Bush used, and that every president of the United States dating back to World War II has used. There's no question of a constitutional authority. Now we have a liberal Ninth Circuit jurist and judge who has been overturned on average 80% of the time. And now that we have a full complement of the Supreme Court, they will look at this executive order and they will rule that the president has the legal authority to suspend immigration from terror-prone countries where we cannot properly vet people. Look, that's a fault of the U.S. system. We need to understand who's coming to our country. Let me tell you one story. There was a woman who came to this country on a K-1 visa. Everybody knows what a K-1 visa is. It means she actually married a U.S. citizen and came here legally. But the State Department's so antiquated in their ability to actually go and look at Facebook posts and social media activities that this woman, her entire Facebook post had indicated that she was willing to come and commit a jihad and kill American citizens. This woman went to San Bernardino a year and a half ago and did exactly that because of the failures of our immigration system. We need to do better. It is the president's job to do better, and he will do better in making sure we have a wall on the southern border. And let me just say a few more things. I'll be happy to take some questions and talk about him as a man and as a person who I've gotten to know. But for the first time since 2009, the American people, when surveyed, said the country's actually moving in the right track. Think about that for the first time. The stock market has seen $3 trillion of value since Donald Trump has been elected on January 20th. But let me tell you a quick story, because this is the difference between the previous administration and the current administration. The previous administration used government authority to be punitive against small business owners, whether it was the EPA or the Department of Labor or whatever it may have been. And so, look, I had the privilege of working for the president for a long time, and he called me up and said, "Corey, do you want to come work for me in the White House?" And I said, "Sir, with all due respect, I'd like to stay on the outside. I got a young family, and yeah, I can be more helpful on the outside." So I started a small business, and my business partner says to me, "Can you do me a favor? Can you go get an EIN number from the IRS, an employment identification number for any small business owner?" This should be about a 15-second process, right? You go online, you fill out the form. So I said to my business partner, "Okay, look, I'll take care of this. I've done this many times. I'll have it in 5 minutes, then we can actually get checks and cash things and not end up, going to jail for money laundering, because that's bad." So I go on the IRS website, and they say, "We're temporarily down from December 23rd to January 3rd, but if you'd like to call this 800 number, a representative can help you." And I said, "Okay." So I call, I wait 44 minutes on the phone, and Mrs. Johnson answers, and she says, "Can I help you, sir?" I said, "Yes, I'd like to get an employment identification number for my new small business." She says, "Well, have you filled out the form?" I said, "Well, no, your website is down." She said, "It's down for maintenance." I said, "Yes, it is." She said, "Well, could you do me a favor?" I said, "Well, of course, Mrs. Johnson, what can I do?" She said, "Could you fax it to me?" I said, "What?" She said, "Could you fax it to me?" I said, "Look, I live in Windham, New Hampshire. Nobody in this town has a fax machine. Like, if I drive to Salem and maybe there's a 24-hour Kinko's, maybe I can get there, but I get this new idea. Do you have an email?" She goes, "No, I don't." This is the IRS. She says, "No, I don't." I said, "I can't email you the form." She says, "No, I can't." I said, "Okay, let me ask you a question. If I can make it to Kinko's tonight and leave my children and go there and fill out this form, and I fax you this document, how long will it take for you to get me an EIN number?" She says, 7 to 10 business days. I said, "So you're telling me I can't start a small business?" She says, that's right. The federal government did not allow one small business to start between December 23rd and January 3rd. So I hung up the phone, and I have some privileges and many other people don't. I picked up the phone, I called the president. I said, you're not going to believe this shit. He said, yeah. I said, your government is closed. He said, what do you mean? I said, sir, the government is closed for business. He said, you have to be kidding me. I said, no, I'm not kidding you, sir. And he said, look, we will do better. When my administration comes in, we will make sure that our government is now working for small businesses, making sure small businesses have opportunities to grow, because what we heard time and time and time again on the campaign trail was if you try to start the same small business that you started 30 years ago, you couldn't do because of government regulation. It is time to get the government out of the way. It is time to understand that the government is not the solution, it is the problem. And what I love about this administration is that the people that the president has brought to Washington have never been there before. And everyone says, boy, that's a detriment. It is the single greatest thing, from Jared Kushner to Keith Schiller to Reince Priebus to Steve Bannon to Kellyanne Conway. Not one of those individuals, and I can go through 8 other full-time staffers in the White House, have ever had a .gov email address until 90 days ago. And that is very, very refreshing. But look, I've got so many great stories about the president. New Hampshire is so special to me, but let me just tell you this. Because I'm selfish, I told you at the beginning of this speech, I wanted the last event of the general election for this president to be here in New Hampshire. I'm selfish. And it's a very, very special place to us. If anybody remembers primary night, election night, we were at the Yard in Manchester. And the president had us on stage, the whole team, which was so humbling because we had just dominated in the primary where many people, including Fergus Cullen, told us we could never win. Liar. But that's fine. But you know what? Donald Trump won, and he thanked the people from New Hampshire. And it's been a special place. And we came here and had a huge rally the night before the primary at the Verizon Wireless Center, which was in the Verizon Wireless Center since changed names. It was a snowstorm. It was snowing like mad. 3 of our staffers actually got into car accidents that night on the way to the event. And we had a great event. And then we came up here for the general election, and I said to the advance guys, this is George Ujikos, who runs the advance for the White House. I said, George, I just have one favor. And I know I'm not part of the campaign, I got one favor is all I ask. Make New Hampshire the last event for me, because we're going to win. And the president was doing 6 events a day, 3 different time zones, and he was in Pennsylvania and Ohio and just going crazy. And I said, all I asked for is the last event. And they said, okay, Corey, we'll do it for you. We'll do it at the arena. We'll do it the night before the election, and we'll do it at 8 o'clock at night. I said, Georgie, do me a favor, don't do it at 8 o'clock at night. I know this guy. He's not going to stop working at 8 o'clock at night. Please don't do it at 8 o'clock at night. I said, no, it's going to be 8 o'clock. It's the last event on the schedule, and it's going to be the final event of the presidential campaign. He's going to finish there. He's going to go back to New York, and we'll watch the election results come in. And if you remember what happened, the election got very, very close. And I know the president well, and I know his work ethic, and I know his tenacity. And the last event was supposed to be at the New Hampshire arena, and it went off at 8 o'clock. It went off a little late, and it was a light show, and it was amazing, and the guys put all their effort in to make it the last biggest event of the campaign season as a favor to me and the right thing to do for the people in New Hampshire. And then the president said, I want to go do one more. And I knew it. And he jumped on the airplane, he flew to Michigan, and he did a midnight rally in Michigan. And he finished up there at 1 o'clock in the morning. He came back to LaGuardia and landed wheels down about 3:30 in the morning on election morning. And I knew the president would never stop at 9 o'clock. I just knew he wouldn't do it. I knew the candidate would not stop because there was one more opportunity to see one more person. And we won Michigan by the slightest of margins. And that's who you have as a president. You have an individual who will do whatever it takes to be successful. He is not saddled with 30 years of Washington dogma to tell him how things have always been done, and it drives some of the staff crazy when the president of a duly elected country calls him, even though we don't have diplomatic relations with him, and they tell him he's on line 1, he says, I'll pick it up, and 9 guys in the State Department's heads explode. He doesn't care. It's amazing, because Washington is changing. He's been there for 90 days. There's a false narrative from the mainstream media that we're going to hit this 100-day marker, and it's going to be the worst administration.
For the first 100 days ever. Let's look back at it. I think Abraham Lincoln had a state secede from the Union the first 100 days. I could be wrong, but I think it's true. That's a pretty bad first 100 days, right? I think JFK might have had something called the Bay of Pigs, right? Maybe not so good the first 100 days. And what the president's going to have, what this administration is going to have is, they're going to make another run at repealing and replacing Obamacare. Probably next week, because that's a pledge that he made to the American people. That's going to get done. Then he's going to move forward. He's going to get a tax reform bill done. And then after that, he's going to invest $1 trillion with a T into infrastructure projects. Those are the pledges that he has made on the campaign. You know what Governor Sununu said? It is my life, only on a different level. When they said, Governor, what's your agenda? He said, well, my agenda is what I said on the campaign trail. And we're holding to it. The similarities are amazing. Because everybody says, what's Donald Trump's agenda? Why is he doing these things? Well, because he traveled the country for 18 months or 2 years and said exactly what he's going to do. He's keeping his promises to the American people because he's not a politician, he's a businessman, just like the governor was beforehand. And it's a different world, and the governor is so right. The relationship that Governor Sununu has and Paul LePage has is so important to the people of New Hampshire and Maine. Because there are so many things that the federal government can help with. Whether it's funding projects, or the opiate epidemic, which is a terrible problem here in our state. The president knows it. Attorney General Sessions has been here already to discuss it. Chris Christie has been put in charge, the governor of New Jersey put in charge to look at the problems. We have a very, very serious problem. We know that land border crossings are down on the southern border, and once we put a wall up, we can stop illegal drugs from coming in and coming to New Hampshire. This is a problem that must be solved, and the governor needs to work with the federal administration to make sure that New Hampshire stays a priority, because we cannot continue to have this in our state. So look, I've talked for a long time. I've got some great stories about the president. I had a high privilege of bringing my family to the White House on Monday for the Easter egg roll. And we saw the president, and my kids they'll be 6, my twins are 8, and our daughter's 10. And we were standing, and we were about to do the Easter egg roll, and the president was about to come onto the lawn, and we were guests of his. And we're so very lucky because we were standing there, and he walked down, and there were a fair amount of people at the property. And the president just stopped right in front of us. And he stopped and took a picture. He didn't do it anybody else. It was so humbling. The president would stop and see me and my family and recognize the effort that we gave him, because he's such a loyal guy. And he remembers the people who got him here and the people who helped him move forward. And I've had so many great privileges by having the opportunity to go inside that amazing building. You'll see the President of the United States behind the Resolute desk. And in my first trip into the Oval Office, the president called me and said, "Corey, would you come see me?" I said, "Of course, Mr. President." I walked in, he was sitting behind the Resolute desk, and anybody who's ever been in that building understands just the gravity of what has taken place in that room and the life-altering decisions. And the Vice President was there, and we just sat for a minute. I said, "Man, I'm a guy from Lowell, Massachusetts who lives in Windham, New Hampshire. And I'm sitting here at the Resolute desk with the President of the United States and the Vice President of the United States. And we are truly the greatest country in the world." And I never forget how lucky I am and how lucky we are in New Hampshire. But sometimes those moments just weigh on you. And all that time away from my family, missed my kids' soccer games and baseball games and football games, and 2 years on the campaign trail is a lot. But when you sit there, you realize the direction that we're taking our country, which is 180 degrees from where we've been for the last 8 years. You look back and you think of all the sacrifices you have made, supporting candidates that you have been with, and it's all worth it. And I am so very grateful to be a New Hampshire resident. I'm so thankful for the people of New Hampshire who supported this campaign and all the other candidates in the primaries and our decisive victory here. And I just want you to know that I choose to raise my family here and be part of this community, not because we have to be, but because we want to be. This is the place where everyone understands what's important. And I can tell you, as long as I have the privilege and the honor of speaking to the President, I will do everything humanly possible to make sure we remain the first in the nation primary forever. So thank you very, very much.
Ladies and gentlemen, Lewandowski. Thank you, Corey. Thank you for that terrific presentation. On behalf of Rockingham County, we have a token of our appreciation. We'd like to thank you for the time and energy and effort you've put forth this evening, and as you mentioned in detail, all the energy you put forth on behalf of us here in New Hampshire and serving our country. So thank you, Corey Lewandowski, for being with us. Rockingham's own Corey Lewandowski.
Croc TV.